The Star Wars galaxy has everything: laser swords, space wizards, and a concerning number of planets that are just one biome. But today, we're diving into its real mysteries. The Jedi species so rare, even Grogu's babysitter didn't make the cut. We're ranking the top 10 based on actual lore, not just cute factor, from hey, I've heard of them, to wait, Disney made these up, right? Stick around, or risk the council revoking your nerd card. And hey, smash that subscribe button. Do it for the Force, it's cold out here. The winds of Mirial do not howl, they whisper. Across its frozen plains, where glaciers tower like shattered monuments, and frost clings to every breath, the air itself hums with secrets. Here, survival is not a skill, but a covenant, written in ice and blood. The Mirialans, their skin etched with tattoos as intricate as star maps, learned this truth long before the Jedi came to their world. Their ink was not decoration. It was a language, a ledger of trials endured, of pacts struck deep within the ice, of bargains whispered to the northern lights. To earn a tattoo was to dance on the edge of oblivion. Mirialan younglings, no older than 12, were cast into the tundra for months, armed with nothing but a vibroblade, a single ration of rill, and the echoes of their ancestors' voices. They navigated labyrinthine crevasses that gobbled the unwary, scaled cliffs that wept frozen tears, and endured windstorms so fierce they could carve the flesh from bone. Each survivor returned bearing marks of endurance. A snowflake carving across the wrist for surviving the gale's unceasing barrage. A spiral etched into the forehead for deciphering the Force's faintest murmur. A pair of wings inked along the spine for mastering the silent art of ice walking. Tasks that would humble even seasoned explorers. But no trial compared to the journey beneath the glaciers, into the ice temples that lay buried beneath miles of ancient ice. These sanctuaries, revealed only by shifting tectonic plates, housed walls that shimmered like jeweled facets, inscribed with glyphs impossible to translate by any known language. Mirialan elders claimed the temples were gifts from Ashla, the light itself. But their true purpose was far more perilous. The glyphs whispered of techniques purged from Jedi history, rites to bind one's spirit to another, invocations to awaken the world between worlds, and litanies to commune with the Whills. The Mirialans did not master these arts, they bartered with them. A tattoo, once earned, became a key to forbidden knowledge. A helix on the arm could uncloak hidden passages of the Force. A constellation on the shoulder might guide the bearer through the currents of time itself, but such power demanded sacrifice. With every secret shared, the tattoo would fade, draining the bearer's life force until the skin lay as blank as the snows that birthed it. For centuries, they functioned as the galaxy's silent arbiters. Neutrality was their shield as much as their creed. When conflict erupted on Dantooine, Mirialan envoys brokered peace with nothing but a shared cup of ice-melt tea and woven tapestries of peace glyphs. When the Hutt clans feuded over spice routes, their diplomats inscribed treaties on midnight blue slate, binding rivalries in word and rune. Yet neutrality bred suspicion in the council. They treat the Force like a commodity, Master Mace Windu once grumbled, watching a holo recording of a Mirialan envoy dissolving a blockade with a single word and a flick of inked fingers. The Jedi distrusted their icy pragmatism, their refusal to pledge themselves wholly to light or dark. To the Council, they were neither monk nor warrior, but something more unsettling, merchants of power. By the time the Clone Wars tore across the galaxy, Miriel's temples lay in ruin, bombarded by separatist artillery and Coruscanti siege engines. The great sanctuaries turned to slush, their crystal glyphs ground to powder by starship thrusters. The surviving Mirialans retreated into hidden enclaves, frozen villages far from sensor grids, where tattoos glowed with residual magic, pulsing with the secrets they could no longer risk revealing. Their neutrality shattered, they scattered across the outer rim, some joining the Republic's covert services as spies and saboteurs, others vanishing into the underworld, selling fragments of their knowledge to the highest bidder. Amid this exodus emerged one who would forever stain their legacy. Barriss Offee. Luminara Undulli's prized Padawan, renowned for her crystal-clear form and unerring intuition, wore her tattoos like armor. But whereas other Mirialans boasted brilliant blues and greens, hers were muted, the ink repelling her skin as though refusing to be bound. In lightsaber drills, she moved with uncanny foresight, anticipating every strike and countermove, abilities no training could gift her. Yet behind her calm facade, Barriss's heart wavered. She felt the pull of the temple's dark echoes in every swirl of her helix and in every fractal of her snowflake. The night of her betrayal, the temple corridors hummed with a silence more profound than the void. Barriss moved as a wraith, her grey-green robes melding into shadow. As she planted the explosives beneath the council chamber, her tattoos began to shift. The snowflake on her cheek cracked, revealing a jagged Sith rune that pulsed with malice. The helix on her forearm unraveled into a coiling serpent, its fangs poised to strike. In that moment, she did not flinch. The runes, she realized, had always hidden beneath her skin, waiting, patient, hungry for release. When the bomb detonated, firelight danced across shattered columns and rent banners, casting grotesque reflections of her betrayal. The council called it madness, a lone act of rage. They expunged her name from the archives, decreed her a pariah, and ordered every mention of Mirial's hidden rites, sealed beneath layers of bureaucratic red tape. Yet in the ruins, clues endured. The autopsy hollow on Barriss's body revealed tattoos undisturbed by standard removal techniques. Hollows of security logs showed the bombs placed with surgical precision, bypassing safeguards designed by lightsaber-wielding Jedi. And a half-melted holocron buried in the debris flickered with a single Mirialan phrase: "The ice remembers what the Jedi forget." Those who survived scattered like shards of broken crystal. On Jakku, Rost the Scavenger recounted legends of a Mirialan scribe whose tattoos could rewrite the Force's currents, stories told around spice lanterns in the desert's canyons. In Nar Shaddaa's neon haze, a Mirialan K, 560 hacked Imperial databanks, her wrist helix glowing beneath her sleeve as she leaked declassified files to the rebellion. Far beyond, hidden enclaves on Lothal whispered of a lone tattooed prophet, a child born with a vacant patch of skin, prophesied to restore what Barriss had shattered. And deep beneath the glaciers, where the ice groans like the Earth's frozen breath, a single mural endures. Carved into primordial ice, it depicts a Mirialan elder, tattoos ablaze with living light, standing before a storm of violet snow. Beneath the figure, letters cut in crimson ice read, "We etch our fate on flesh, but the true covenant is born where the storms converge. But the darkest secrets aren't worn on skin, they're bred in storms." The Jedi's greatest diplomats were living lightning rods. The storm that follows Miriel's whispered legacies does not rage, it calculates. On Tholoth, tempests are not random outbursts of nature, but living, breathing phenomena, honed into instruments by a people who learned to speak the language of thunder. The Tholothians did not fear the storm, they became it. From birth, their tendrils, delicate, nerve-like filaments beneath the skin, hummed with static long before they ever drew breath. To outsiders, they were silver-tongued emissaries, the Republic's most adept negotiators. But in secret councils and midnight conclaves, they were conductors of a symphony few could perceive, wielding weather itself as both shield and spear. Tholoth's skies are stained with perpetual twilight, bruised purples and electric blues crackling with unseen energy. Beneath this eternal dusk, the planet's surface bears scars of past tempests, lightning canyons miles deep, gouged by bolts that split the earth like kindling. In these trenches, the youngest Tholothians crawled before they walked, guided by an instinct older than recorded history. To survive, they did not hide from lightning's wrath, they allied with it. Children born in summer's fierce storms wove their tendrils around floating spindles of wind, drawing power from rotating currents so strong that the air itself seemed to warp around them. Parents taught their offspring to hear the sky. A subtle drop in barometric tension, the distant rumble of gathering clouds, the microscopic crackle of ionized particles dancing along the horizon. Initiation rites among the Tholothians were among the galaxy's harshest. At dawn, infants were swaddled in conductive silk and suspended from natural pylons, obsidian spires that acted as lightning rods, during the dry season's first thunderheads. Those who survived the initial jolts earned their first tattoos, veins of silver ink tracing tributaries from wrist to elbow, marking their affinity with the storm's path. By adolescence, they could predict invasions days in advance, their bodies acting as living barometers. A Tholothian's first word is lightning, elders would whisper, though it sounded less like myth than prophecy. When Jedi Master Adi Gallia strode into the Geonosis arena, her silver-bladed saber flashed amid the roar of battle. Observers spoke of her precognition, but her tendrils had guided each parry and thrust. They sensed shifts in energy, channeled ambient currents, and fed her blades dance, transforming her into a living storm of light and motion. To the Separatists, it seemed an art beyond Jedi training. In truth, it was born of Tholoth's tempests. Throughout the Republic's golden age, the Council dispatched Tholothian diplomats to the galaxy's most volatile disputes. On Reloth, discord between noble houses threatened civil war. A single Tholothian envoy stood under storm-racked skies, raising an ornate rod topped with a storm-harvesting crystal. With a whispered invocation, she channeled thunder into a resonant hum that cut through factional hostility. Leaders stood silent, mesmerized by the storm's precision, and agreed to peace accords that reshaped the Outer Rim's balance of power. In the corporate sector, when negotiations over mining rights stalled, Tholothian envoys introduced a new clause. Failure to resolve disputes within lunar cycles would trigger controlled lightning discharges over contested claim markers. The promise alone ensured compromise. Their reputation preceded them. No debtor dared defy a negotiator whose tendrils might summon storms upon their own holdings. Yet neutrality carried a perilous edge. The Republic prized their objectivity, but war and diplomacy are twin blades. One always threatens to sever the other. When the Jedi Council objected to their independence, accusing them of moonlighting as mercenaries of the sky, the Tholothians reminded them that storms heed no guardian but nature's own laws. And if storms could be guided, so too could the will of nations. In the shadowed corridors of power, Palpatine's agents listened to Tholothian whispers as though decoding secret code. The Chancellor coveted their understanding of latent force phenomena, believing he could harness it in the Final Order's designs. When Adi Gallia fell to a savage blade on Florum, Imperial medics arrived before her breathing ceased. Under Palpatine's direct orders, they harvested her tendrils, those whispering nerve filaments that pulsed with Storm's memory, and extracted them with surgical precision. The tendrils were smuggled to Exegol's hidden laboratories, where Sith alchemy and dark science fused them to a broken clone body. In that abominable union, a new puppet emerged, Supreme Leader Snoke. Cloaked in whispers and shadow, he commanded force storms, furious tempests that lashed at starships and annihilated whole squads of rebels. Snoke's storms were not miracles, but stolen echoes of Tholoth's heritage, twisted into weapons of fear. The theft did not go unnoticed. On Tholoth itself, the skies turned cruelly silent. Lightning trembled on the horizon but never struck. Thunder convulsed without sound. Elders called this void the storm's mourning. Tendrils, once vibrant with static, hung limp along arms and necks. Young initiates failed rites they would have passed in infancy. The planet's natural rhythms buckled beneath Palpatine's betrayal. Yet the Republic, consumed by the Clone Wars and later ravaged by the Empire's rise, dismissed Tholoth's alarm as superstition. By the time the storm's heart grew distant, The stronghold of Grand Moff Tarkin's forces had turned local weather arrays into weapons, replaying recordings of thunder to intimidate outlying worlds and enforce fear. The true storm, born of Tholothian mastery, lay shackled beneath Sith cruelty. Survivors adapted, turning loss into new forms of resistance. A Tholothian engineer on Coruscant covertly retrofitted weather satellites to reroute Empire patrols, using her tendrils to anticipate orbital scans. Pirate crews on Kessel learned to read ion trails like storm fronts, evading blockades with uncanny precision. Each act echoed the Stormcallers' original gift, shaping turmoil into advantage. In cantina backrooms, exiled diplomats whispered of a workshop on Ord Mantell where the last free tendril bearers engineered gauntlets that could summon microbursts of lightning, enough to overload a single droid or light a path in the darkest smuggler's run. Tholothian exiles became sought-after tacticians, their knowledge of environmental manipulation coveted by every faction in the galaxy. On Lasat, beneath skies heavy with Darth Vader's occupation, Imperial probes scanned glassed plains for signs of life. Their sensors registered overhead storms, but the thunder rumbled hollow. Recorded loops played to deter scavengers. The storm here was not natural, it was a performance, a mask for something far colder, the memory of genocide. The Lasat remembered the massacre under Ubrikian orders, a tidal wave of heat and artillery that toppled forests and turned cities to ash. When the probes detected a single living lungfish jolting beneath the sand, the storm trembled as if mourning its lost brethren. In that trembling, the memory of lightning awakened. For storms do not lie. They reflect the wounds of worlds, and massacre leaves scars that lightning cannot heal. Deep within Tholoth's great canyons, a conclave of stormcallers gathered in the storm's eye, that rare calm ringed by ferocious winds. Generations of tendril bearers formed a circle, hands raised to the heavens as thunder danced across chasm walls. They channeled remnants of Adigalia's stolen legacy, serrated currents of blue-white pain, and wove a new invocation, a storm of reclamation. Their voices rose as one, a chorus of living lightning that sparked along the canyon floor. Cracks opened in the Imperial weather arrays above, scattering storm satellites like broken shards. On Coruscant, signal nets sparked with interference. On Kessel, spice rigs shuddered. On Jakku, sandworms lashed at the horizon in rhythmic heave. The storm reclaimed its voice. In the aftermath, Tholoth's skies regained their thunder. Tendrils hummed with fresh power, stronger for the silence they had endured. The people emerged from enclaves to find the planet reborn. Lightning canyons scarred anew, but alive with possibility. The Stormcallers took to the Republic's edge worlds once more, not as diplomats of compromise, but as guardians of the sky's will. Beyond Tholoth, in secret rebel hangars, gauntlets forged from stormglass recorded the planet's renewal. Pilots strapped on wristbands of conductive crystal, their fighters guided by lightning-born algorithms that evaded Imperial fighters with uncanny grace. Senators on Chandrila recited the Stormcallers' creed in hushed chambers. We are the Thunder's voice. No tyranny can silence our storm. And so, the Tholothians reminded the galaxy that storms can be guided, but never contained. They taught that the finest diplomacy arises from understanding forces greater than words, that neutrality can become complicity when its price is silence, and that stolen power returns as rain on the oppressor's parade. But not all storms are natural. Some are massacres. Visual. Imperial probes hover over Lasat's glassed plains, their scanners pulsing red as thunder rumbles in the distance, a living warning no recording can conceal. What if genocide was just the first death? The Lasat did not die, they transcended. To the Empire, genocide was a blunt instrument, a means to erase, to silence. But on Lasat, where the winds carry the ash of the fallen, death is not an end. It is a threshold. The Lasat knew this long before the Purge. Their warriors did not fear oblivion. They whispered to it, bargained with it, and when the blade fell, they crossed into the mist with a promise: we will return. Lasan's nomadic clans roamed the planet's highlands and wastes, guided by Ashla, the light that shone even through the darkest nights. Their caravans followed ancient hyperspace lanes, shimmering trails older than the Republic itself, mapped not in holocrons or star charts, but in instinct and story. Clans held council under twin moons, reading shifting constellations as though they were living glyphs, each star's pulse forecasting the path of traders, raiders, and empires alike. Children learned these routes by touch and sound. They pressed bow rifle barrels against earthen dunes, listening to buried hums that told of ships passing in the void. Their claws, strong as battle axes, traced symbol runes in the sand, markers for safe camps and hidden wells. At night they lay beneath the sky, entwined in woven blankets dyed with the vibrant blues of Kerplos flowers, singing lullabies that shaped the currents of passing vessels. Their bow rifles, elegant weapons forged from iridescent Lasat alloy, were both armament and compass. A single blast could shatter rock or recalibrate a star-driven map, for each rifle was etched with fractal circuits keyed to hyperspace ley lines. To hold one was to hold a sliver of the galaxy's soul. When the Empire arrived, it did not announce its intent with honor. Stormtroopers descended like locusts, razing temples and drilling into stone vaults. The Great Purge was swift and brutal, its hollow transmissions depicting a people consumed by flame. But the Lasat elders saw deeper purpose. Palpatine's agents did not come merely to erase a race. They came to harvest their weapons. Project Harvester was buried deep within Imperial archives. Under sterile lights and guarded doors, scientists dissected bow rifles, seeking the secret of their bond to the world between worlds, a realm where time blurred and the dead could walk. They learned to graft alloy shards onto Starkiller bases and Star Destroyer plating, seeking to weaponize the spectral bleed of memory and power. Each stolen rifle became an anchor in their experimental armories, tools to tear open rifts and channel Ghostfire storms across battlefields. Zeb Aurelios, the last captain of the Lasan Honor Guard, survived the initial onslaught by slipping into hidden ice caverns, his rifle glowing with the promise of return. When he ignited its core, the air shimmered. Spectral shapes emerged, warriors clad in ceremonial garb, eyes blazing with unspent valor. They coalesced into the Ghostfire Legion, echoes of the Purge's unquiet dead, bound to their rifles by sacred vows. In skirmishes across the Outer Rim, Zeb found allies and foes alike halted by the Legion's apparition. On Jeddah's shattered plains, rebels reported phantom lasers intercepting Imperial volleys. On Crate's white salt flats, rebel pilots saw ghostly cruisers flicker into reality, guiding their fighters through ion storms. The Ghostfire Legion did not fight for territory or titles. They fought to remember, to ensure that every bolt and blade carried the weight of Lasan's legacy. But the Empire's tampering had consequences beyond mortal reckoning. When alloy fragments from stolen bow rifles were integrated into Sith war machines, the rifts into the world between worlds widened. Crews aboard experimental Star Destroyers vanished. Communication arrays hummed with voices absent from the living world. In one report, an entire battalion refused orders, their minds flooded with visions of clan ceremonies beneath a blood-red sky. The experiment failed, leaving scars in space-time itself, tears where the dead slipped through and whispered warnings to the living. Soon, the Ghostfire Legion found themselves battling not only stormtroopers, but unstable phantoms, lost souls drawn from the bleeding rifts, twisted by fear and betrayal. Zeb led his spectral kin into these liminal zones, forging pathways of light through the darkness. Each victory sealed another thread, healing the tear in the galaxy's tapestry. Yet every rift they closed left another spectre behind, an echo that would haunt the living until every ghost found rest. Amid the chaos, the Lasat's greatest secret endured, their seers. Before the Purge, lawmasters walked among the clans, their eyes clouded in milky white. They spoke of Lyra San, a sanctuary hidden behind a supernova's glare, where the light's song never ceased. When the clan scattered, a few seers slipped through storm-riven skies to find this mythic refuge. Guided by Ghostfire whispers, Zeb and a handful of warriors pierced temporal storms to reach Lasat. There, they found crystal-lined caverns where time layered upon itself, moments from past, present, and future coexisting in prismatic harmony. They saw Lasat reborn beneath starlit domes. They witnessed the Purge's end when the Empire's grip loosened. They perceived futures where Ghostfire guided entire worlds toward peace. In that timeless place, the seers bound their visions into living glyphs carved on cavern walls, ensuring that no Lasat would ever forget who they were, or what they might become. With visions renewed, the Ghostfire Legion returned across hyperspace lanes. They brokered alliances with rebel cells on Attalon and readied battlefronts on Scarif. Each campaign they led was more than military engagement. It was ritual remembrance. Before a major assault, Zeb would ignite his bow rifle atop a dune, summoning spectral ancestors to stand guard. Their silent vigil bolstered rebel morale, reminding fighters that they carried not just weapons but legacies of honor. Imperial officials dubbed them myths, tales spread by fanatic insurgents. But every report bore the same detail. Weapons that roared like thunder, shapes that flickered like distant fires, voices that guided the living through impossible odds. No propaganda could deny the Ghostfire Legion's presence. In the face of terror, their apparitions became symbols of hope, proof that even genocide could not extinguish memory. Yet even visions have limits. The hollow archives of Moncala recount a final council beneath coral halls, where rebel leaders debated the cost of wielding Ghostfire. Some feared the Legion's ties to death would taint the new Republic. Others saw in them a bridge between worlds, living proof that life and death were threads of the same tapestry. In the end, it was Luke Skywalker who offered counsel. Power that binds the dead to our cause may serve for now, but true reconciliation comes when the living forgive and the dead find rest. Thus, the new Republic formed the Shrine of Ashes and Light on Lasat's ruined capital. There, bow rifles were laid to rest beneath glass domes, etched with clan sigils and Ghostfire runes. Zeb, his rifle now silent, passed the mantle to Loremaster Eki, whose visions would guide the Republic's future. The Ghostfire Legion faded into legend, not erased, but woven into song, a chorus of living and spectral voices harmonizing under twin moons. Above Lasat's silent dunes, storms still gather along lightning canyons. In their quietest moments, travelers swear they hear whispered laughter, or the distant echo of a bow rifle's crack, calling them home. The Ghostfire Legion's promise endures. Once Lasat, always Lasat, for clans may fall, but memories endure. But weapons can be stolen, visions can't. The Jedi silenced them, the Sith envied them. The asteroids of Iktotchi do not orbit, they quarrel. Clustered in a belt thick with cosmic debris, these jagged rocks collide in a perpetual dance of destruction and rebirth. Here, amidst the chaos, the Iktotchi carved their temples. Structures not chiseled from stone but hewn from bloodstone, a mineral that pulses with iron-rich prophecy under every strike of a lightsaber or crash of a meteorite. To the Iktotchi, the future was not a path to walk but a beast to tame. They etched their visions into the bloodstone surface, each glyph a warning, each rune a dirge. But warnings, like bones, can be buried, and dirges, when silenced, fester. On Iktotchi, children are born with stars in their eyes, literally. Their irises fracture into starburst patterns, granting them glimpses of futures both radiant and ruinous. From infancy, each Iktotchi undergoes the rite of unblinking. Strapped atop a high ridge as comet tails sear the sky, their retinas tested by fire and force alike. Those who survive return to the bloodstone temples, eyes clear yet haunted by visions of invasions, plagues, and betrayals that have yet to unfold. Elders then slit their palms, letting blood pool into carved grooves in the temple floor, where it seeps into the stone and hardens into crimson crystal. These blood scrolls become living scripture, a record of futures foretold and destinies denied. Scribes read these scrolls by torchlight, voices low, uttering prophecies that shimmer across walls like living flame. The Jedi Council regarded the Iktotchi with wary respect. Their precognitive gifts rivaled those of any master on the Council, so formidable that the Jedi silenced them rather than risk their secrets. Iktotchi seers once negotiated peace on Florum by revealing the exact moment a palace coup would commence. Senate delegates capitulated rather than face a fate mapped in bloodstone. Yet their proclivity for doom earned them a darker moniker, the Doomsday cult. For every prophecy they uttered, a world trembled at the forewarning. Among the greatest of Iktotchi seers stood Jedi Master Saisi Tiin, his horns curling like living questions. Tien's visions were unrivaled, able to discern the subtle currents of the Force across entire star systems. When he foresaw the return of Exegol, a world where shadows bred shadows, he petitioned the Council for a mission into the unknown regions, but Mace Windu, ever cautious, refused. Worse, he erased Tien's memory of the vision with a refined memory wipe, severing the thread that linked prophecy to action. The future is fluid, Windu insisted. Yet fluidity to the Iktotchi was an illusion. A prophecy deferred is a chain left taut, ready to snap. The Sith, by contrast, envied the Iktotchi's clarity. Darth Plagueis once offered an Iktotchi seer a mountain of credits, an ocean of cortosis ore, to reveal a single blood scroll. The seer spat blood onto his boots and hissed, "Your death is already written." Enraged, Plagueis razed her temple to cinders, but the blood scrolls survived. Centuries later, Palpatine exhumed their shards to guide his own machinations, translating glyphs that described a cloned emperor built of ash and ambition, a direct map toward Project Stardust, the Death Star Project's Sith precursor. Imperial Archivists uncovered the location of the greatest Bloodstone temple on Uvo 4. Under the codename Project Harvester, they excavated its vaults, scooping up blood scrolls and snipping horn tips from living seers to study their psionic conduits. Their goal, weaponize prophecy to script galactic events in holocrons and feed them into holonet propaganda loops. When scattered bands of rebel archaeologists later uncovered the temple's remains, they found no scrolls but only ash and hollowed chambers, proof that prophecy cannot be stolen, only silenced, temporarily. Saisi Tien's end was both ironic and tragic. When Order 66 hissed through his comlink, Tien stood amid a clandestine conclave of Iktotchi seers. His final vision was not of his own death, but of Exegol's resurrection, an echo he failed to remember. His severed horn, recovered from the temple steps, still hums with the resonance of that lost revelation. Blood-tipped, it embodies the link between sacrifice and sight. The blood scrolls, however, tell a darker tale. One where the Iktotchi's extinction was not solely the Empire's doing, but their own. A fragmentary prophecy, etched in a language no droid can pass, reads, "The silenced will scream, the erased will etch anew." Scholars debate its meaning. Did it foretell an Iktotchi renaissance, or an unstoppable vengeance that would hunt every betrayer? In the Outer Rim's shadowed wilds, whispers speak of a cloaked figure wielding a lightsaber whip, a weapon crackling with alternating arcs of crimson and violet. This whip, long thought lost, bears the sigils of the Kage warriors, secret guardians of Jedi secrets who once stole Iktotchi glyph runes to encode their own electro-saber forms. The whip's handle is carved from bloodstone and its lash sings with the same dirge notes as the ancient blood scroll hymns. Rumor holds that this figure, neither Jedi nor Sith, unlocks prophecy by slicing through time's membrane. In one documented sighting, it cleaved open a doorway into the world between worlds, summoning spectral seers who spoke never-before-heard warnings of wars yet to come. Their chorus faded before mortal ears could grasp its meaning, but those who heard it understood one thing: the Iktotchi's legacy endures in shadow. Prophecies do not die. They hibernate in bone-cold chambers, waiting for the moment their dire truths must be spoken. The final blood scroll, buried beneath the ruins of Iktotchi's Temple of Echoing Tomes, remains unlocated, lost among drifting asteroids. It is said to contain the culmination of all Iktotchi visions, a map of fate that leads either to salvation or to the abyss from which no spirit returns. Some believe the prophecy's final line will be spoken when the world between worlds fractures completely, flooding the living world with echoes of the dead. Others claim it speaks of a lone survivor, a seer reborn, bearing horn tip and bloodstone whip, who will herald an era of truth by tearing down every lie ever scripted in holocron or temple archive. But not all prophecies die, some hunt. They weren't Jedi, they were insurance. In neon-lit colonies where the galaxy's pulse thrummed through glowing arcologies and vaporing hollow ads, the Kage warriors moved like living shadows. Their origin was neither temple nor academy, but the winding tunnels beneath Quarzite's mirrored towers, where children learned to blend into darkness and silence became their greatest blade. Here, in hidden enclaves carved from pale stone and plasma-lit veins, the first Kage were forged. Nomads of necessity, bound by a solitary creed, protect the Jedi's secrets at all costs, even the cost of their own souls. From infancy, a Kage initiate memorized the Order's holocrons and Starfleet schematics, learning that knowledge birthed power and power must be guarded against any hand unworthy. Under the watchful eyes of veteran sentinels, they mastered the art of silent transit, slipping through storm drains on Coruscant's underbelly, gliding across the glassy floors of the Jedi Temple's lower archives, and surfacing only to deliver coded transmissions to masters ensconced in distant star cruisers. In time, their skin bore faint bioluminescent tattoos, cryptic patterns that pulsed when keyed to Jedi holocrons, mapping sword forms and meditation rites long thought lost to galactic upheavals. When the High Republic era dawned in gilded triumph, the Jedi Council recognized a need beyond robes and lightsabers, a cadre that could eliminate threats before they festered, a force of unseen vanguards who answered to no council decree but a silent pact of mutual survival. Thus, the Kage warriors earned their place not as Knights of the Force, but as its clandestine guardians, an insurance policy against betrayal and ruin. Their operations spanned worlds. On Findar's cloud-shrouded resorts, they intercepted Sith assassins before poison ever touched a senatorial goblet. On Seria's orchard moons, they recovered stolen kyber crystals from pirate enclaves, leaving only whispers of their passage. Under Coruscant's endless neon haze, they diffused bombing plots against the temple's sanctum, cloaking evidence in drifting motes of airborne dust. Always they vanished before dawn, leaving no trace but rumors and the faint scent of ozone. Yet for all their stealth, the Kage were not immune to loss. Each mission etched scars across their souls, comrades swallowed by collapse tunnels on Naima Outpost, mentors cut down amid riotous evacuations on Raxus Prime. They carried those losses in silent processions through hidden shrines, vaults filled with braided cords, each representing a fallen guardian. There, beneath candle-lit holocron altars, they vowed anew to uphold their covenant. The Jedi Order must endure, whatever the sacrifice. As the Clone Wars erupted, Kage tactics evolved to match the galaxy's fracture. They learned to navigate battlefields of shifting allegiances, slipping behind separatist lines to sabotage droid foundries and hide deserters seeking refuge. They communicated with Jedi generals through encrypted Vox channels, offering reconnaissance on enemy strongholds and extracting civilians from crossfire zones. In one fateful sortie, they rescued Master Yaddle from a collapsing battle station, ferrying her to safety in a stolen consular ship whose hyperdrive was tuned to silent drift. But the war's crescendo brought a tragic reckoning. Order 66 fell like a death knell across the stars, and the Jedi Order collapsed in a sudden hemorrhage of betrayal. The Kage, coded to serve Jedi commands, found their oaths lashed by paradox. Protect the Order, yet the Order was no more. Many scattered to the outer rim, guarding remnant holocrons in forgotten caverns. Others vanished into the underworld, their artifacts auctioned to crime lords under the guise of black market relics. In the vacuum of Empire's rule, Kage warriors became ghosts. Their secret techniques, blade forms that danced like flickering auroras, mind shields that repelled interrogation electroshocks, survived only in whispered legends among rebel cells. Bounty hunters spoke of faceless assassins who slipped through stormtrooper patrols, extracting political prisoners in complete silence. Rebels credited them with stealing tactical plans from Imperial High Command, turning those blueprints against the very fleets that once hunted Jedi. It was this shadow knowledge that found its way into legend. Tales of a coven of spectral fighters whose speed surpassed TI interceptor lasers, whose code of honor demanded sacrifice without question. Such rumors reached the ears of the nascent Knights of Ren, a cadre of dark warriors drawn to power through pain. They adopted the Kage silent strike form, twisting it into a dance of vengeance under the Supreme Leader's command. Thus, a legacy meant to protect life became twisted into a weapon of fear. On Ossus, that ancient cradle of Jedi wisdom, one final meeting took place. A solitary Kage veteran, Ysanna, awaited beneath crumbling columns etched with Old Republic runes. In her hand she held a carved skull, a relic from the bone-singing ritual of the Ysanna morticians. But this skull sang not of death, but of prophecy. It whispered names and warnings, calling to those who still believed in the Force's balance. Luke Skywalker, guided by doomed transmissions and the hope they carried, arrived alone beneath the starlit sky. He knelt before Ysanna, whose helmet lay at her feet, revealing streaked hair and eyes that carried centuries of loss. He reached out, his fingers brushing the relic's jagged edge. The skull's song, ancient, resonant, coursed through him, revealing echoes of the Kage vow. Protect the light, even if it means becoming a shadow yourself. Ysanna spoke then, her voice a soft echo in the cathedral's hush. We were insurance, Skywalker. Our blades and minds safeguarded your order's secrets, but insurance expires, bones do not. She laid down the skull, its song fading into the night. Around them, Ossus's crystal spires trembled, as if acknowledging the finality of a covenant drawn in blood and steel. Luke rose, carrying the weight of her words and the hollow promise of hidden legacies. He vowed to honor the Kage's sacrifice, and to ensure their techniques served not the darkness of vengeance, but the light of hope. He would teach their forms to those who sought to defend the helpless, weaving their silent art into the tapestry of a new Jedi Order. In the neon glow of 100 worlds where Kage shadows once fell, that vow would echo in every training circle, every whispered incantation of the Force. For the practice of silence and sacrifice, once reserved for those who lived between the stars, would become the heart of a reborn order, reminding all that true protection sometimes demands vanishing into legend. And so, the chapter of the Kage warriors ends where another begins, in the silent bones beneath Ossus's sky, waiting for new hands to heed their final warning. They weren't monks, they were morticians. In Ossus's petrified forests, where bone spires rose like silent altars, the Ysanna morticians wove death into harmony, tuning the Force through the marrow of the fallen. Dusk settled over Ossus like a benediction, gilding twisted trunks with molten light that seemed almost liquid in its glow. Beneath the petrified canopy, a procession wound through aisles of ancient ribs and skulls, great remains of Leviathan beasts that had long since turned to stone. Their jaws gaped into the void, empty sockets reflecting the dying sun. At the heart of this solemn march walked the Bone Singers, Ysanna morticians whose purpose was neither celebration nor mourning, but a bridge between flesh and spirit. Each carried a carved staff tipped with a polished femur, hollowed and inscribed with ivory runes that thrummed softly with the Force. From childhood, an Ysanna initiate learned to read the resonance of bones, the way marrow vibrated with echoes of life, the manner in which death left its own fingerprint on every joint. Their training began beneath frost-etched arches, where whispers of fallen explorers drifted like ghosts. Masters guided students through silent rituals, chanting low, resonant litanies that coaxed pulses from still marrow. By candlelight, they traced glyphs around carapaces, coaxing each bone to sing a unique note. These tunings, living symphonies of memory, could calm dying spirits, imprison malicious echoes, and, on the darkest occasions, trap Sith shadows that drifted from age-old holocrons. The Ysanna watched their work with unwavering devotion. In the Academy's vaulted chambers, holocrons pulsed in time with beating hearts of bone, as if the entire forest had become a living archive. Students learned not to fear death, but to embrace it as part of the Force's tapestry. Their staves fluttered with spiritual energy, each step in ritual dance reinforcing the link between bone and breath. When the Old Republic's forces marched across Ossus to quell pirate uprisings, they found battlefields transformed. Blaster bolts arced toward carved bone talismans, skulls rimmed in kyber crystal, pelvises etched with protective glyphs, vertebrae strung in prayer beads that thrummed with warding energy. Soldiers whispered that the bone singers had woven their very spirits into these forms, creating guardian wards that repelled fire and toppled droidicas. Entire squads, pinned beneath bombardment, found themselves guided to safety by phantom hands reaching from shards of bone. In one legendary encounter, a marauding Hutt warband descended upon an Ysanna enclave, only to be met by a choir of chanting morticians. Their voices rolled through petrified trees, each note a vibration that resonated in bone and stone. The Hutts, shaken by the uncanny chorus and inexplicable tremors beneath their boots, retreated before a single warrior raised her femur staff. News of the Bone Singer's power spread across Republic channels, that wars could be won not with might alone, but with the harmony of life and death in concert. Yet none of these wonders compared to the greatest secret, the Cathedral of Ossus, hewn from megalithic bone and hidden beneath the forest's oldest groves. In its vaulted chambers, lit by bioluminescent fungi whose spores drifted like motes of light, stood crystalline ossuaries housing the tortured echoes of Sith spirits. Among these was the essence of Darth Nihilus, a wraith whose hunger once swallowed entire worlds in agony. When Jedi Masters confronted his phantom, they found him shackled within a cage of twisted femurs and kyber shards, his primordial scream echoing through the Force, forever denied release. Binding such a spirit required an unimaginable sacrifice. Each Ysanna mortician offered a drop of their own blood into the ossuary's core, anchoring the Sith echo with living essence. Over centuries, this ritual became sacrosanct, a continuous chant in low, resonant tones, an unbroken cycle of life giving shape to death. It was said that as long as the Bone Singers upheld this vow, the galaxy would remain balanced between hope and despair. When the Clone Wars ignited across the stars, the Republic Council dispatched envoys to Ossus, seeking holocrons and lore to combat rising Sith threats. They came bearing gifts, credits, revered texts, diplomatic assurances. Yet the Morticians refused to share their deepest secrets, guarding their ossuaries against Jedi and Sith alike. They warned that binding Sith spirits was not a tool, but a burden, a wound in the Force that demanded eternal vigilance. Some Jedi bristled at this reluctance, calling the Ysanna isolationists. Others understood. Certain powers could not be wielded without courting oblivion. In the end, the Republic left with only tales of the Morticians' might, but no keys to unlock their vaults. As the war's flames dimmed and the Empire rose, Ossus fell under Imperial edict. Stormtroopers marched through petrified groves, hunting holocrons and relics for the Emperor's vaults. The Bone Singers retreated into catacombs, sealing the cathedral's gates with locks carved from fused bone and star metal. But the ripple of Order 66 echoed through those vaults, where every bone vibrated with the shock of betrayal. Some Morticians resisted, falling with staves clutched in skeletal hands. Others succumbed to the Inquisitor's relentless hunt, their ossuaries desecrated and moved to black vaults for Sith experimentation. Rumors persist of Imperial Archivists transplanting Nihilus's ossuary into the Emperor's secret repositories, hoping to weaponize the Wraith's hunger. But none have returned to confirm what horrors they unleashed in Emperor's hands. Yet a resilient cadre survived. Led by Priestess Aruna, a direct descendant of Yaddle's lost clan, they escaped beneath Ossus in carved bone vessels, navigating winding tunnels that led to hidden caverns. There they re-established an enclave, a bone-carved ark floating on subsonic currents far from Imperial reach. They carried with them the last holocrons of Mortician rites and the sealed ossuary of Darth Nihilus, guarded still by the living bones of their order. The ark drifted through deep caverns for decades, its corridors lined with skeletal guards whose hollow eyes still pulsed with warding runes. In the ark's heart, Aruna convened council beneath the ossuary's cage, pledging to maintain the vigil until the Force itself reclaimed balance. Centuries later, a new echo of the Force reverberated through Ossus's petrified forests, Yaddle's final farewell as witnessed in Grogu's vision. The small green child, attuned to the Force's deepest currents, found himself in a vision of Exegol's swirling shadows, sensing Yaddle's blood spill feeding the Emperor's resurgence. He awakened within a bone-carved cell of the Ark, his large eyes reflecting ossified remains and flickering torchlight. The Bone Singers rose from shadow to cradle him, their claws clicking over polished femurs, telling him in silent chorus that blood and bone were intertwined in cosmic symmetry, that spirits could be caged, but blood, once shed, coursed through the Force, leaving indelible marks on history. On a remote isle of Ossus, where the Ark's final anchor rested, Luke Skywalker sought fallen relics to rebuild his order. He stood before the cathedral's sealed gates, nostrils flaring at the scent of ancient marrow and candle smoke. With gentle hands, he traced carved locks shaped from femurs and phalanges, feeling the residual pulse of binding chants beneath his fingertips. The gates opened only to those whose hearts resonated with both life's fragility and death's certainty. He entered the vaulted hall where the ossuary of Darth Nihilus lay dormant, its crystalline cage cracked but still humming with latent hunger. Aruna knelt beside it, robes now woven with threads of silver bone, her eyes lined with centuries of duty. "Master Skywalker," she intoned, voice echoing like wind through ribs, "we bind the darkness to protect light, but beware, spirits can escape, blood can't." Luke understood then that true balance required more than sealing away cruelty. It demanded confronting the wounds that blood carved into the Force. He lifted a bone-carved talisman, a vertebra infused with kyber crystal, and felt its resonance pulse through him, each beat a testament to countless Morticians' blood vows. He vowed to honor their sacrifice, weaving their rites into Jedi teachings so future generations would bear witness that death, when met with courage, could become life's greatest guardian. As he departed Ossus, the forest sighed behind him. Bone spires shimmered under twin moons, guardians once more at rest. Yet deep within the cathedral, a single ossuary quivered, its crystalline bars humming in the dark. A fragment of spirit stirred, a reminder that some echoes can never be fully caged. Beyond Ossus's petrified groves, the galaxy spun toward uncertain dawns. The new Jedi Order, reborn under Luke's guidance, carried the Morticians' talismans, a reminder that knowledge of death could forge life's greatest protections. Yet every new teaching bore the caution of Aruna's words, that unpredictability lay in the Martyrs' blood, and some echoes, once unleashed, could never be recalled. In the silent aftermath, the Bone Singers returned to their walks among petrified trees, tuning the Force through bone's resonance. Their chants drifted like lullabies across Ossus's valleys, hymns to the dead, vows to protect the living, and warnings that spirits, though bound, can one day break free. But spirits can escape, blood can't. They don't live 900 years, they remember them. On a world caught in ceaseless cycles of birth, death, and rebirth, the species of Master Yoda became living archives of time itself. Damp mist clung to tangled reeds on a secluded island of Achto, each droplet reflecting twin suns in miniature. Beneath this perpetual twilight, a hidden tribe thrived, beings akin to Yoda despite the galaxy knowing them only by myth. Their silvered skin bore faint etchings, spiraling runes that glowed when the Force pulsed through ancient ley lines. Children arrived swaddled in ceremonial robes at the temple's gate, and elders moved with the same vigor they had at a century's dawn. Legends told that Ahch-To lay at the nexus of temporal rifts, currents in the Force where past, present, and future interwove like strands of light. Jedi masters who meditated on its shores sometimes glimpsed echoes of distant eras, the dawn of the Order, the fall of the Sith, even futures yet unmade. Though the world between worlds offered a deeper path, the island's time loops were subtler. A fallen leaf would drift upward into budding branches. A cracked holocron's fragment would reassemble in the wind. When the First Order sought to uproot the planet's secrets, stormtrooper squadrons arrived only to discover identical copies of Jedi glyphs, freshly carved overnight. Each horizon lost its meaning. Patrols circled forever, unaware they retraced paths in endless loops. The island itself became a guardian, ensuring its inhabitants remembered the Jedi's truths through centuries of calm and conflict alike. Grogu, the tiny wanderer whose spirit trembled with echoes of the past, bore within him the promise of this ancient lineage. His DNA, a repository of Yoda's species and their temporal gifts, held a stabilizing key the Kaminoans once overlooked. When Chancellor Palpatine commissioned life-seeded experiments, he sought to replicate Force-sensitive clones. Yet instability plagued every prototype until a single bloodline strand from Grogu's genome was tested in secret. For a fleeting moment, clone troopers exhibited higher midi-chlorian counts and reduced degeneration, proof that Yoda's kin granted resilience to artificial lives. But Order 66 severed that hope, and the program was dismantled before any legion of Force clones could arise. Centuries later, echoes of that failed program rippled through the Bad Batch's missions. On a remote mining moon, they uncovered a hidden vault where Bardottan scientists, an entirely different rare species, had attempted to link clone minds in a neural hive. Their stolen data hinted at stabilized synaptic implants derived from Yoda-kin genetics. The batch disrupted the tests, releasing droids from mental sway. As blaster fire collapsed the facility's biolabs, the flicker of Bardottan lore and Grogu's distant heritage converged. Clones could rebel against conditioning, but a true hive-mind left no spark of dissent. It was unity without freedom. On Ahch-To, Luke Skywalker wandered through ancient shrines being reclaimed by moss and salt. He paused before a circle of standing stones, each carved with the spiral runes of Yoda's people. Lifting a hand to the cold monolith, he felt time's stream pool at his fingertips. In that hush, he sensed the ghosts of Jedi who had come before, guardians not of temples or titles, but of memory itself. They had lived through millennia, not by longevity alone, but by the weight of remembrance, passing tales of hope and warning through shared consciousness. The last Jedi approached the island's vantage point over swirling sea. His robes billowed in an unseen wind, perhaps a ripple from the rifts themselves. He closed his eyes and exhaled the galaxy's sorrow. Wars born of fear, empires built on darkness. Then he inhaled a breath drenched in salt and secrets. In that breath, he accepted a legacy, that the Jedi's finest warriors were not defined by how long they lived, but by how deeply they remembered. Behind him, Grogu watched from the cliffside, too young to grasp millennia, yet drawn to the same runic glow. His small hand rose in silent awe. Luke smiled and placed a gentle hand atop the child's head. "They teach us," he whispered, "that memory can shape destiny." The island's stones responded with a low hum, as if affirming the fragile bond between past and future. Far below, the ocean's swell pulsed with the rhythm of hidden rifts, carrying echoes across star lanes. Across the galaxy's fractured expanse, whispers of immortal martyrs, reached reluctant ears. Rebels who carved holographic messages into starships, senators who tattooed spiral runes on their cloaks, and Force-sensitive orphans who dreamed of a temple reborn. Each carried a fragment of Iktotchi's truth, that in remembering every struggle and every triumph, the Jedi Order would endure beyond any lifespan. As night fully claimed the island, the stars overhead shimmered with uncanny clarity, looping constellations tracing circles that bled through dimensions. Luke and Grogu descended toward the hidden pathway, ancient stairs carved over limestone and coral. With each step, they left footprints that would vanish by dawn, yet the runes beneath their soles would store the imprint of every traveler who came after. They emerged at the temple's threshold, where a fallen Shuk-level bale of wild kelp tangled with broken eaves. There the voices of the immortal Martyrs echoed, a chorus of memory woven from lives lived, lost and remembered. In the swirling fog, Yoda's words from a distant lesson resonated. Train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose. Yet on Iktotchi, fear was tempered by the certainty that nothing was ever truly lost as long as memory held fast. Before the moons rose again, Luke knelt beside a fresh marker carved from living rock. He placed his hand over the runes and offered a silent prayer, not for the tombstone of a fallen hero, but for the living archive of the Jedi ages. May we never forget, he vowed, voice low as the sea's hymn. Grogu reached out, pressing his tiny palm to the stone, and the runes glowed in response, pulsing with the Force's heartbeat. As they departed, the island's guardians, creatures unseen by most, stirred in their burrows, sensing the renewal of an ancient bond. The immortal martyrs watched from beyond time's veil, their presence a promise that the Jedi's greatest strength was not years, but memory. And far across the stars, in alleys of neon and dust, that promise kindled sparks of resistance. Wars that would shape new legends for generations unborn. But clones can rebel, hive-minds can't. The Jedi's greatest fear? A shared mind. In Bardotta's crystal spires, thoughts intertwined like living threads, forging a unity that rendered dissent impossible and seeded a darkness the galaxy would one day seek to replicate. A pale violet dusk settled over Bardotta's soaring towers, each a translucent shard rising from iridescent plains. Beneath their tapering heights, the air thrummed with low-frequency hums, the subtle vibrations of an entire people connected through unspoken thought. Here, in hidden chambers carved from flawless crystal, the Bardottans practiced their sacred communion, a hive-mind chorus that bound them in perfect harmony. From earliest memory, every Bardottan child was taught the Song of Minds, a ritual weaving individual impulses into the collective will. Initiates sat in concentric circles around a central psionic amplifier, its surfaces etched with resonant glyphs. With closed eyes they hummed, first softly, then rising in strength, until a unified cadence filled the chamber. In those moments, boundaries dissolved. Joy and sorrow, hope and fear merged into a single stream of awareness that flowed through every member. No secret could survive within this unity. Deception withered under the clarity of shared perception. Ancient texts spoke of Bardotta's first ascetics, the mind-weavers who discovered the crystal spire's latent psionic properties. They found that by chanting in unison beside the spires, they could amplify thoughts across vast distances, heal psychic wounds, and even glimpse echoes of possible futures. Over centuries, the society evolved into a living network, each individual mind a node in a vast tapestry. Council deliberations were instantaneous, disagreements resolved before they formed. Crime vanished, for no lie could outpace the collective truth. Yet such perfection carried its own peril. When a Jedi envoy arrived seeking counsel during the High Republic's Golden Age, the Bardottans welcomed her into their web. She felt 1,000 hearts beat as one, and saw the manifold facets of their history, triumph and regret, devotion and hubris. In gratitude, the Jedi added their own memories to the Song of Minds, tales of balance, of trials by darkness, of the Force's gentle hand. But the experience left the envoy shaken. A unity so complete risked erasing the spark of individuality that empowered true choice. Millennia later, remnants of Bardottan law reached the highest echelons of the First Order. Their PsyOps division, ever hungry for mind control breakthroughs, seized upon fragments of Mindweaver doctrine. Under clandestine programs, scientists grafted psionic amplifiers onto stormtrooper helmets, attempting to fuse clone minds into a pliant collective. Early prototypes achieved horrifying success. Entire platoons moved without orders, their thoughts a single hungry will. But in each test, a single echo of the Bardottan vision persisted. True unity left no room for empathy, only the cold calculus of imposed order. When the Empire collapsed and the Resistance scattered, hidden archives revealed the full scope of these experiments. Rebel hackers unearthed files showing Kane Uno, a rogue technologist, reverse engineering psionic amplifier circuits for the Knights of Ren. Their dark blade dances, strange, synchronized duels, bore the echo of Mindweaver forms, a twisted homage to a culture that once protected life by dissolving self. In secret hollows, Kylo Ren's own fractured psyche grappled with the lure of unity, to silence the discord of his mind by merging it with others. Across the outer rim, scrappy cells intercepted neural link broadcasts, signal bursts meant to herd clone units into obedient phalanxes. Recon teams reported storms of static voices unaffiliated with any command, as if the ghosts of Bardottan's Song of Minds resisted containment. Engineers salvaged X-brain probes, adapting them to protect pilots from distraction and fear. In the hidden caves of Jedi, Force sensitives whispered that the temptation of hive-minded perfection was the greatest seduction of the dark side, promising power but demanding the sacrifice of self. On literary scrolls uncovered by Cassian Andor, hidden in Kerkoiden archives, lay a prophecy of sacrifice. When one stands for all must bleed for one. He studied the brittle script by flickering lamp, translated from ancient dialects. The final line struck him cold. A foreseeing of Jyn Erso's ultimate choice, a singular act that shattered the collective echo long enough for hope to be reborn. He traced the prophecy's letters with a fingertip, realizing that the Bardottan legacy was not merely a warning against hive-mind impulse, but a testament to the power of one free soul to inspire countless others. In the heart of a rebel base on Ryloth, technicians reconstructed a single psionic amplifier, titled The Collective's Lament, to decode Imperial PsyOps transmissions. They modified it to mask individual minds rather than fuse them, turning a weapon of coercion into a shield of privacy. Whispers of this device spread among insurgents, thieves and outcasts, strategists and storytellers, each finding solace in the knowledge that their thoughts were once again their own. The amplifier became a symbol, that unity inspired by respect, not by enforced merging, preserved both diversity and strength. On Chandrila, Mon Mothma held secret councils beneath pleated banners, safe from HoloNet surveillance. She spoke of the Bardottan warning. We must stand together, yes, but never at the price of who we are. Senators and exiles alike nodded, their faces lit by the faint glow of encrypted holoscreens. They shared data on Storm Commando defeats, stormtroopers who echoed multiple voices in panicked disarray when the neural link malfunctioned. Each tale reinforced the belief that freedom was forged not in sameness, but in the harmony of many. In ancient ruins on Ossus, Luke Skywalker discovered the final testament of the Mindweavers, a crystal codex inscribed with the original Song of Minds. He felt the reverent tug of 1,000 collective breaths, each echo a fragment of the Force's will. But as he reached out to touch the codex, he paused, remembering Aruna's words on Ossus's cathedral steps. Minds can be silenced, history can't. He realized that preserving history, recording each voice, each choice, was the truest safeguard against tyranny. Under the pale moons of Bardotta itself, a lone Mindweaver remained. Elia, the Sentinel of Echoes, guardian of the last crystal spire. She perched above silent streets, her thoughts a lattice that reached across memory and time. When rebel envoys arrived bearing Luke's codex, she pressed her fingers to its facets, merging her consciousness with the galaxy's flow. She saw wars end, star systems cradle newborns, and the cyclical rise of darkness and light. Her final duty glowed within her, to convey her people's legacy, so that it might guide free minds rather than bind them. As dawn broke over Bardotta's violet sky, scattered lightsabers ignited in training circles across hidden bases, each blade a promise of individuality within unity. Pilots closed their helmets' comm seals, feeling the warmth of unshared thoughts. Senators inscribed Alia's name in new treaties on Coruscant's rebuilt dais, honoring the price of both communion and autonomy. And in the Outer Rim's forgotten wilds, a single psionic amplifier hummed to life, a memorial to the Mindweaver's dual gift and warning. For in the end, the Bardottans taught that true strength arises not from erasing dissent, but from weaving disparate spirits into a living tapestry, vibrant, unpredictable, indomitable. Their crystal spires may stand silent now, but their song endures in every free mind that dares to speak its truth. But minds can be silenced, history can't. The Jedi's oldest lie, it's written in water. In Kerkoidens' flooded archives, ink flows from purged trooper blood, etching truths meant to drown in silence. Mist drifted across sunken marble halls, turning stained stone columns into ghostly pillars beneath silver-green waters. Here, the Kerkoidens maintained vast libraries of submerged scroll cases, watertight cylinders inscribed with runes of preservation. Their civil robes, woven from hydrophobic fibers, billowed around them like kelp as they glided through submerged aisles. Each archivist carried a shell-like seal, dipped into crimson reservoirs where blood from fallen purge troopers mingled with sacred water to form living ink. In those final days of the Jedi Temple's dominion, Kerkoiden scribes recorded every prophecy, every strategic plan, and every caution whispered by the Force itself. They believed history's currents must flow unbroken, even when marked by treachery. When Order 66 fell, their blood ink allowed scrolls to self-heal tears, and recitations of names carried echoes of remembrance through the tides. As Imperial forces ransacked above, the Archivists enacted the ritual of the watery quill, sealing new volumes in obsidian urns that sank into vaults carved from bedrock, lost beneath shifting sands and tidal surges. Generations later, tales of the drowned Archivists drifted through hidden rebel networks. Mon Mothma herself referenced Kerkoiden resilience when rallying a fractious Senate bloc, an example of knowledge so precious it would not perish even beneath crushing tyranny. On Coruscant's back alleys, exiled historians whispered of the submerged halls of Tantal, a mythic repository said to house every Jedi Master's council and every Master Strategist's blueprint. Centuries after the Purge, Princess Leia, fleeing Imperial clutches, discovered the myth in a battered star chart. Guided by C-3PO's methodical translations, she traced currents to the moon of Kelleres IV, where the archives of Tantal lay hidden beneath brackish seas. There, dissenting engineers funded by her secret network used credits carved from Yavin's relief funds to unseal ossuaries and recover scrolls. Among them lay treatises describing the Death Star's vulnerable reactor lattice, penned in fluid characters that danced like living currents across vellum pages. Leia arranged covert auctions, trading knowledge for starfighter escorts and medical supplies, thus founding a crucial lifeline for the Rebel Alliance. But no archive is impervious to flame. When Darth Vader's Inquisitors traced the leaks back to Kelleres, their purge torches ignited the sanctum's submerged walls, vaporizing volumes and scorching stone. Water hissed where fire met flood, and libraries collapsed into wreckage. Yet as the flames died, the last scrolls, ink still rippling in tidal pools, shed shimmering fragments that rose to the surface like embers of memory. The survivors fled, carrying fragments that would seed future translations in hidden enclaves across the Outer Rim. Across the galaxy, rebel archivists pieced together those fragments. On Hoth, In rebel hideouts warmed only by a single generator's hum, scholars reassembled torn scrolls on heated glass tables, watching blood ink run through water channels cut into the ice. Each recovered line became a coded broadcast, traveling in encrypted bursts to Chandrila's resistance cells. Even in the deepest base in Yggdrasil, the fragments sparked whispers of hope. In a remote vault beneath Dantooine's granite crust, Cassian Andor unearthed a fragmentary Kerkoiden codex wrapped in kelp fiber scroll ties. Illuminated by a flickering datapad lamp, he watched script coil into new essays, an echo of the living ink's memory. The lines shifted, reforming into a single phrase: "She who gives her life shapes the galaxy's fate." Cassian's pulse quickened as he realized this prophecy foretold Jyn Erso's final choice, the spark that would snuff the Empire's greatest weapon. He carefully copied the text, hiding it within his jacket's inner seam, knowing that though histories burn, gods endure. Meanwhile, on Chandrila's leafy vistas, Mon Mothma quizzed surviving Kerkoiden scholars on funding flows. She dispatched envoys to the archives of Tantal's allied sites, forgotten temples repurposed by pirate kings, drowned vaults in the Calamari trenches, and hidden chambers beneath Datamir's whispering woods. Each micro-donation of credits or supplies extended the Alliance's reach, prolonging the fight against crushing Imperial might. Above, orbiting Nova Pods, a silent subscriber to the past, the Journal of the Whills glimmered in holocam feeds. Its spiraling script morphed into a haunting visage, Snoke's face emerging from luminous script, whispering one name: Rey. Footage, hacked by smuggler networks, showed the journal's pages shifting as though alive, individual glyphs dancing into new patterns, reflecting secret lessons still buried in Kerkoiden prophecy. On the remote world of Maridun, Force-sensitive survivors of the massacre discovered tattered pages washed ashore in kelp clumps. They held council among black salt fires, debating whether the blood-inked runes held warnings of biological weapons yet to come. They found instructions to create healing balms from kelp alkaloid extracts, evidence that the Kerkoidens foresaw the galaxy's contamination by Empire and sought to prepare antidotes amid the wreckage. As rebel fleets carved paths through Imperial blockades, each mission began with stolen scroll whispers. Pilots strapped kelp fiber strips around consoles, reciting half-forgotten rhymes that, when aired in open channels, triggered ancient frequency keys in the Emperor's holonet filters, disabling tracers for critical supply runs. What seemed like poetry turned out to be coded Kerkoiden map keys, an underground network binding the Alliance's farthest reaches. Even the smallest scrap of blood ink inspired new hope. On Ryloth's war-scarred soil, surviving Twi'lek librarians fashioned makeshift papyrus from salvaged vellum and droid parts, scribbling Kerkoiden warnings in glowing aqua ink. They hid these living scrolls in spice containers sent to Jakku's settlements, knowing that whispers of forbidden prophecy could ignite new revolts in the darkest dunes. But as archives burn, gods don't. Among the charred ruins of Kelleris, a single watertight cylinder with intact runes lay half-buried in ash. Stormtroopers overlooked it, deeming it a worthless relic. Yet inside, dormant spores of kelp and blood ink waited, primed to awaken under the right touch. A passing scavenger reignited its seals, unleashing a flood of Kerkoiden lore. Tales of ancient Jedi masters learning humility, forgotten treaties danced upon by moonlit tides, and of a final prophecy still unspoken. In the hidden heart of the galaxy's fight, the Kerkoidens' legacy swelled like a rising tide. Their living ink coursed through rebel comm lines, healing fractures in morale as surely as it preserved burned words. Their blood scroll hymns became lullabies sung to children born amid conflict, a reminder that even in the darkest times, when archives lie in ruins and temples collapse, some truths endure beneath the waters that tried to claim them. The final vision of the drowned Archivists is of a world reborn, pages unfurling like kelp fronds in sunlight, ink dancing across living oceans, whispers of the Jedi's oldest lie giving way to an even older truth. that knowledge, once felt in blood and water, can never be fully extinguished. But archives burn, gods don't. The Force doesn't have a will, it has editors. Beyond time's flow, the Whills sit in silent chambers of light, each ripple of history penned to hide horrors no mortal should ever glimpse. A brilliant shaft of luminescence pierced the void, illuminating an endless library carved from living starlight. Endless shelves spiraled skyward, each brimming with manuscripts bound in cosmic hues, papers woven from nebulae and ink distilled from supernova ash. Here, the Whills convened. Beings of pure consciousness whose forms shimmered between thought and flame. They drifted along aisles of luminescent glyphs, their glowing visages reflecting every twist of fate they had ever authored. From the moment the first hum of life arose on Coruscant to the distant echoes of dying suns, the Whills shaped the Skywalker saga with careful strokes. They wrote of Anakin's fall and Luke's rise, not as organic history, but as a grand distraction, an epic woven to draw attention away from a far older danger, the cosmic prison of Abeloth, a god force bound within the unknown regions, chained by rites so arcane they evaporated from every chronicle once the Whills decreed their erasure. In their chamber of mirrors, vast halls where every reflective surface showed a different outcome, the Whills watched as lightsaber duels and Senate intrigues played out in infinite variations. Each crackled spar of saber or impassioned speech was catalogued, annotated, and when necessary, redacted. Minor details were altered, names changed, alliances shifted, to obscure the true locus of power decoding Abeloth's restless will. Yet, for all their omnipotence, the Whills grew restless. Each cycle of the Skywalker tale repeated familiar arcs. The desert orphan rising to heroism, the fallen knight redeemed by love. These narratives, though resonant, bored the editors of time. They longed for genuine chaos, for stories that burned with raw inception rather than neatly tied bows. And so, secluded in their living library, they awaited a fracture, an unscripted ripple in the Force that might unlock Abeloth's cell once more. In hushed whispers, echoing like distant starlight, they debated whether to scribe a final line that would shatter fate's veneer. Yet creation's spark terrified even them, for to birth outright chaos might consume their own luminous forms. Back on Coruscant, Leia Organa combed hololithic archives to secure funding for rebel cells. She enlisted covert pilots to smuggle rare kyber shards, brokered deals with Kessel's spice cartels to underwrite clandestine operations, and fostered alliances among fringe worlds suspicious of both Emperor and Senate. All the while, a hidden codex emerged, a fragment of the Journal of the Whills, recovered from a lost temple on Malachor V. Its pages glowed with whispered warnings. When heroes follow the same steps anew, the true prison stirs. Leia pressed the codex closed, understanding that the Alliance must transcend Death Star assaults and echo into realms untouched by conventional warfare. On Ossus, ancient cradle of Jedi wisdom, scholars pieced together the journal's scattered passages. Luke Skywalker, now a master of both lore and legend, stood before eager recruits in a moss-grown amphitheater. He recited the Whills' creed not as dogma, but as a catalyst for free will. Scripts bind us. Only by embracing uncertainty can we escape our own legends. He took a worn holocron, the last link to Old Republic trial rites, and erased its final mandate, urging apprentices to carve their own destinies in living stone rather than parchment. Deep within Exegol's catacombs, a lone inquisitor uncovered evidence of Abeloth's shackles, bone-thick chains embedded in living rock, pulsing with imprisoned rage. Desperate to harness this god force, the Inquisitor attempted to undo the ancient rites. But as the chains rattled, their primordial echo overpowered his Sith training. He braced for the dark side's seduction, only to hear a whisper, not of power, but of caution. Some bindings are not to be broken. Stone walls groaned and collapsed, sealing both prisoner and prison in eternal starlight. As the galaxy braced for final confrontation, fragments of the Death Star streaking across the sky, the rebel fleet rallying in the outer rim, a single transmission cut through every channel. From frequencies thought dead, the journal's last command echoed, "Seek the editors beyond the story. They hold the key to true balance." In every star system, voices paused mid-sentence, hearts quickened with the knowledge that true agency lay not in repeating a known saga, but in forging untold chapters. It was Cassian Andor who first answered the call. On Ferrix, amid scrapyards and silent docks, he decoded an ancient glyph matching the spiral rune from the Whills fragment. He linked the pattern to a temple ruin on Mortis, a world where time itself bent in the shape of three: past, present, and potential futures. Gathering a ragtag team of rogues, scholars, former stormtroopers, and a reluctant night sister, he departed in a repurposed freighter, its gutted hyperdrive humming with stolen riffs of hyperspace codes. Their arrival on Mortis was greeted not by thunder, but by a hush, a living silence broken only by pulsating ley lines beneath cracked marble. 3 moons hung suspended, reflecting red, white, and black constellations in shimmering pools. Cassian stepped onto a platform of living rock stained with ancient glyphs, feeling the Force's pulse beneath his boots. Before him waited Baylan Skoll, exiled Sith Lord turned Seeker, his lightsaber unlit but resonant with retained ferocity. Behind Baylan loomed the bone-stone fortress that contained Abeloth's prison, walls alive with restless shadow and carved in writhing reliefs of the Bound One's past and possible futures. Baylan's eyes met Cassian's in silent accord. Here stood 2 forces beyond the Whills' scripts, a spy who defied destiny, and a Sith who renounced the lure of predetermined fate. Wordlessly, they advanced together, sensing the bone-cold chains shimmer in response to Baylan's presence, recognition from a force once integral to the prison's binding. Behind them, Mortis's echoes summoned ghostly visages of Jedi past, the father's solemn grief, the son's tempestuous hunger, the daughter's mournful serenity. In their midst flickered Grogu, memory made living, reaching out to a chain link, his pale blade casting emerald gleams on obsidian stone. Grogu's touch sent ripples through the bindings. The chains quivered and released a chord of pure force that resonated like a cosmic bell. Light streamed through fractures, illuminating reliefs of Abeloth's rise and shackling, yet the prison held. Abeloth's laughter, a distant chiming, echoed through corridors, warning that her bonds were woven from fear itself. Above the tomb of realities, a Whills' eye opened in the starry expanse, a single orb of molten starlight. It reflected Cassian, Baylan, Grogu, unscripted protagonists drawn into a narrative beyond the editor's reach. Slowly, the camera closed in on the Whills' iris, fractal filaments of timelines converging in an eternal spiral. In that primordial moment, the Whills spoke across dimensions. "We wrote your sagas but never lived them. Now choose your own ending." The chains glowed, possibility rippling along each length, yet remained unbroken. Proof that destiny, once bound, must be severed by living will, not cosmic decree. And so, from the loftiest spires of cosmic editors to the smallest uncharted hearts of rebels, the galaxy held its breath. For the Force's greatest secret was not who wielded its power, but who dared to rewrite its story. And if prisons can break, then the true editors, the Whills, must learn that tales untold burn brightest in the void between stars. But prisons can break. And the Whills are bored. Visual. The last shot lingers on the Whills' eye, reflecting Mortis's tri-moons converging. A silent promise that the story at last belongs to those brave enough to live it. So there you have it. Jedi so rare, even their home planets forget they exist. But hey, extinction is just the galaxy's way of saying out of stock. Want more? Smash that like button, share with someone who still thinks Yoda's species is called Gremlin, and subscribe. Because unlike the Whills, we don't charge for cliffhangers. May the Force and the algorithm be with you, always.